G'day mates. Ever heard about the time when the Allies almost had to call off D-Day due to a lost cricket ball? Now there's a tale that's bound to knock your socks off. Picture this. It's June 6th, 1944. The British troops are huddled together, their hearts pounding in anticipation. The signal to start the attack is to be a hearty whack of a cricket ball. A nod to the homeland, you could say. So there they were, the lads, waiting for the sound of leather on willow. But all they got was an awkward silence. You see, the bloke who was supposed to smack the cricket ball into the horizon had somehow lost it. One moment it was there, the next, poof, vanished like a ghost. You could cut the tension with a knife. Soldiers started scrambling around, looking for the missing ball. The minutes were ticking by, and the Germans weren't going to wait for the British to finish their little game of hide and seek. The fate of the free world was hanging in the balance, and the Allies were on the brink of calling off D-Day. But then, as if by some divine intervention, the ball was found. A sigh of relief echoed through the ranks. The attack was back on track. With a mighty swing, the signal was given, and the rest, as they say, is history. So next time you're out playing a casual game of cricket, spare a thought for those brave lads on that fateful day. They faced the enemy with courage, they faced uncertainty with determination, and faced the loss of a cricket ball with a bit of good old British humour. And that, my friends, is just the beginning of our journey into the unexpected and often humorous mishaps of D-Day. Stick around, because there's plenty more where that came from. Remember, in the face of adversity, sometimes all you can do is laugh. Imagine being in the history books for delaying one of the biggest military operations because you misplaced a cricket ball. You think the cricket ball story was funny? Wait till you hear about the paratrooper dummies. Yes, you heard that right, paratrooper dummies. Now this isn't some kind of an insult. We're talking about literal dummies made out of burlap, dressed in paratrooper uniforms and stuffed with firecrackers. These were the Allies' secret weapon, affectionately known as Ruperts. The Allies had a brainwave. Why not use these Ruperts to confuse the enemy? And so they did. On D-Day, hundreds of these Ruperts were dropped from planes over Normandy. Their purpose, to bamboozle the German forces. The firecrackers inside them were meant to simulate gunfire, adding a dash of realism to this grand act of subterfuge. However, as you might have guessed, things didn't exactly go as per plan. The Ruperts were supposed to land before the actual paratroopers, causing the Germans to believe that the invasion was happening elsewhere. But the winds over Normandy had other plans. Many of the Ruperts ended up landing far from their intended drop zones, some even landing back with the Allies, and that's where the real confusion began. The Allied forces, seeing these dummies, thought they were their own men. This led to a mad scramble to rescue these paratroopers, only to realize they were rescuing stuffed sacks. Imagine the embarrassment. Meanwhile, the Germans weren't as easily fooled. They quickly figured out the ruse, leading one to wonder who the real dummies were in this situation. But as they say, all's fair in love and war, and the Allies had a good chuckle about it afterwards. So yes, the plan to confuse the enemy ended up causing more confusion among the Allies. But it's these quirky stories that make history so fascinating, don't you think? The Ruperts, these unsung heroes of D-Day, may not have achieved their mission objective, but they sure did leave us with one heck of a tale to tell. So, the next time you feel like a dummy, remember, you're in good company. Did you know a pigeon named Gustav won a medal during D-Day? No, I'm not pulling your leg. Now this isn't your everyday bird tale. Gustav was a carrier pigeon, a tiny feathered soldier who played a crucial role in delivering an essential message during the D-Day invasion. You might be thinking, a pigeon? Really? But let me assure you, this story is as real as it gets. Gustav was part of the National Pigeon Service, a flock of over 200,000 carrier pigeons used by the British during the Second World War. These pigeons were the unsung heroes of the war, delivering important messages across enemy lines when traditional communication methods failed. But Gustav wasn't just any pigeon. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, Gustav had a mission of utmost importance. He was entrusted with the task of communicating the success of the Normandy landings back to the Allied headquarters. Despite the chaos of the invasion, the poor weather, and the daunting distance of 150 miles to travel, Gustav didn't falter. He took off, soaring high above the war-torn landscape, dodging bullets and braving the elements, his tiny heart beating with the urgency of his mission. After a grueling 5 hours and 16 minutes, Gustav arrived at his destination in Thorney Island, England. He delivered the message that would turn the tide of the war. We are here on the beaches. Leaders are being landed, everything proceeding according to plan. For his bravery and service, Gustav was awarded the Dickin Medal, the animal equivalent of the Victoria Cross. The citation read, "For delivering the first message from the Normandy beaches from a ship off the beachhead, while serving with the RAF on June 6, 1944. So you see, heroes come in all shapes and sizes, and sometimes they even have feathers." Gustav's story serves as a reminder of the unexpected characters who have shaped history in their own unique ways. And that, my friends, is how a pigeon became a decorated war hero. Ever had a day when nothing goes right? Spare a thought for Private John Steele. Now, when you think of a bad day, you might think of spilling coffee on your shirt or missing your bus, but Private Steele, he takes the cake for the worst day, and it all started on the eve of D-Day. Picture this. It's the 6th of June, 1944. The moon is high, and the night is alive with the sound of war. Private John Steele, a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne, is preparing to jump into the thick of it. But as he leaps from his plane, things take a turn for the worse. His parachute gets snagged on the spire of the Sainte Mère Église church. Talk about being stuck between a rock and a hard place, or in this case, a church and a platoon of enemy soldiers. So there he is, dangling like a Christmas ornament, while below him, the battle rages on. He's a sitting duck, a target for anyone with a keen eye and a loaded rifle. But our Private Steele is no fool. He plays dead, hanging limp as a rag doll, hoping the enemy will ignore him. For 2 long hours, Steele hangs there, pretending to be dead. Now there's playing possum, and then there's this. But alas, his act doesn't fool the Germans for long. They eventually capture him, and Steele finds himself with a whole new set of problems. Despite the unfortunate turn of events, Private Steele's story doesn't end there. He later escapes and rejoins his division, living to tell the tale of his unfortunate landing. And though he would have preferred a more conventional entry into battle, there's no denying his experience was one for the books. So the next time you're having a bad day, think of Private John Steele. Your spilled coffee may seem like a big deal, but at least you're not hanging from a church spire in the middle of a war zone. Well, at least Steele could say he had a unique view of the battlefield. Misplacing your keys is one thing, but misplacing an entire bridge, now that's a different story. Picture this, if you will. It's the early hours of June 6, 1944, and the Allies are buzzing with activity. They've got a plan, you see, a grand one at that. They're going to drop bridges from the sky. Yes, you heard that right, bridges from the sky. Now you might be thinking, well, that's a brilliant idea. And indeed it was, except for one teeny tiny hiccup. They dropped them in the wrong places. It's like using a GPS that leads you to the middle of nowhere. Only in this case, the middle of nowhere is a hostile territory filled with confused German soldiers, scratching their heads at the sight of these misplaced bridges. Imagine the scene. A bridge, perfectly constructed, dropping from the sky, only to land in a field, a river, or even a town square. It's a bit like the old saying, when it rains, it pours. Only this time, it was raining bridges. Now, dropping a bridge in the wrong place is a bit more problematic than losing your keys. You can't just shrug it off and make a new one. These bridges were meant to facilitate the movement of troops and equipment, and instead, they were causing more confusion and chaos than a kangaroo in a veggie garden. There was one particular instance where a bridge was dropped right on top of a German convoy. Now, I'm not sure who was more surprised, the Germans looking up to see a bridge hurtling towards them, or the Allies realizing that their bridge was nowhere near where it was supposed to be. But as they say, the show must go on. The Allies, despite their navigation errors, pushed forward, making do with the bridges they had and improvising where they couldn't. It was a testament to their resilience and resourcefulness, even in the face of such comical errors. I suppose someone had to explain why the bridge wasn't where it was supposed to be. Ever heard of a tank that can float? Well, The Allies did, and it didn't go as planned. Now imagine this. You're in the middle of a war, and someone at the top brass thinks, you know what we need? Tanks that can swim. Sounds a bit bonkers, right? But in the thick of World War II, that's exactly what the Allies thought would give them an edge during the D-Day invasion. They came up with a special type of tank, affectionately known as the duplex drive or DD tanks. These were designed to swim across the English Channel and then roll up onto the beaches of Normandy, guns blazing. On paper, it sounded like a brilliant idea, a real game changer. But as they say, the devil is in the details. These tanks were fitted with a collapsible screen and a propeller, transforming them into makeshift boats. However, the English Channel, notorious for its rough waters, had other plans. The day of the invasion, the sea was particularly choppy and the weather less than ideal. As the tanks were launched into the water, it quickly became clear that things were going south. The tanks, each weighing nearly 30 tons, were no match for the waves. One by one they began to sink, their dreams of reaching the shore abruptly cut short by the merciless sea. Of the 29 tanks launched from the USS Samuel Chase, only 2 made it to the beach. The rest? Well, let's just say they found a new home at the bottom of the channel. It was a disaster, a calamity of epic proportions, and yet you can't help but chuckle at the idea of these heavy, lumbering tanks bobbing about in the sea like rubber ducks in a bathtub. So the moral of the story? Tanks don't make good boats. Well, there you have it. D-Day as you've never heard it before. We've traversed the annals of history, uncovering the lesser-known, somewhat comical tales of that day. A day that, despite its gravity, was not without its fair share of humorous hiccups. We've met paratrooper dummies that were more conspicuous than covert, a pigeon that earned its wings in the most literal sense, and Private John Steele who, despite his ironclad name, had a rather unfortunate landing. Let's not forget the bridges that found themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the tanks that were meant to float but ended up performing a submarine imitation. Each of these stories provides a unique and, dare I say, amusing perspective on D-Day, reminding us that history is not always a solemn affair. It's a tapestry woven with threads of human error, unpredictability, and yes, even a sense of humor. But perhaps the most important lesson we can take from these tales is that even in the face of the most daunting challenges, there's always room for a bit of laughter. The soldiers on D-Day were facing unimaginable odds, yet they still found moments of levity amidst the chaos. It's a testament to the human spirit, really, our ability to find humor in even the most dire of situations. So, as we wrap up this unconventional look at D-Day, I want to leave you with a challenge. Put on your historian's hat, delve into the archives of history, and dig up your own funny interpretations of what went wrong on D-Day. Perhaps there's a story we've missed, a tale that's been overlooked in the grand narrative of that day. Unearth those anecdotes that add a sprinkle of humor to the seriousness of history. Share them with us, with your friends, with anyone who appreciates a good story. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's continue to explore history in all its facets, the good, the bad, and yes, even the funny. And as you dive into this challenge, remember this: history isn't just a series of events that happened in the past. It's a collection of stories, of human experiences. And like any good story, it's not without its twists and turns, its moments of humor and absurdity. So go ahead, share your funny D-Day stories. And remember, history isn't always as serious as it seems.